Hey everyone, I'm going live again to finish up this Gaslands car, the weathering on it. Notice my videos are getting a little choppy the first few seconds, so I figured I'd wait a few seconds to say anything. Alright, so what I've done here, yesterday I I primed the truck and all the parts really with Duplicolor Automotive Primer. I used first a layer of the red, then a layer of the black. So some parts, such as this guy here, you can, well, actually you can't because I already repainted it, but you can see some of the rust tone. It looked rusty and old. But then I did another coat of Hull Red Tamiya acrylic, followed up with a dusting of custom orange mix. There's red and yellow matte paints. I put those, extended them with alcohol, misted them over this, and it gives you a nice mottled kind of rust look. And then finally, just now, right before I started the video, I sprayed this part and this part, which I masked the bed for the truck. My hand here, get this in focus. I sprayed it with hairspray, just Tresume Tres Two hairspray, and that is going to allow me to remove the paint easily from the next layer. So it's going to look natural as far as the chipping and scratching goes. But of course I will do more chipping and scratching with some of these Secret Weapon Miniatures rust set paints. They sent me this new bag of them. I still have a little bit left of the samples he sent me a few years ago to test out the colors, and I really liked them, so I had to get more. I use them a lot now for rust. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the camera over to my airbrush area, and I can't get very close, but it'll still at least be there while I do this. I'm gonna have to turn my vent on and the compressor, so it's gonna get a little noisy. And what else? I'm gonna spray it with blue. Let's mix it Tamiya blue based on the reference from the client. And I'm gonna mist on top of that a little bit of white and blue just to make it look old and faded. So let me turn everything on and get to airbrushing. This won't take too long. It's just two little parts that I need to spray. Right, so first I'm going to spray the blue color. I have my vent on, which is sucking all of this into my dust collector. Blue looks pretty good. It looks a lot like what the client requested. And I'm not going to go too heavy with these two layers. It'll be easier to chip if they're not. It'll look older as well. I don't want a heavy coat of paint. Alright, so this part's done. Yeah, I don't need to get up in the mill wells or anything, and then I'll do this. body and the grates are sprayed as well. So those are done. And they're not like a great thick paint job, but I don't want them to be. I want them to look old. Alright, next I'm just going to do a little bit of fading on top with a lighter version of that same blue. I mixed these up yesterday, thinned them with alcohol, 91% isopropyl. Just a little bit of sun fading, nothing major. Straight down. I'm not going for modulation. Just a little bit of fading. And that's enough. Do a little more on the sides. Alright. Clean out my airbrush. And I'm just cleaning out the Tamiya paint with alcohol. Same stuff I used to thin it, so airbrush is clean. Alright, turn off the compressor, open the moisture trap, and that's it for the airbrushing portion. All right. Okay, so the two parts of this are now painted. The Tamiya dries pretty quick. And for what I'm doing here, this actually works really well with the hairspray. Tamiya is not the strongest paint, so when you want to chip something like this, it works really well. Alright, so I've got those two parts. I've got all my skewers here that I use to hold the parts in this little block of pink insulation foam. That way I don't get paint fingerprints. You know, I mean, it's a neater way to paint. Pretty standard. Some people use toothpicks, some people use chopsticks. Some of my my skewers have alligator clips glued into them, which makes it easier to hold some of the parts. Alright, so I'm going to need some water here, and I'm going to find a good brush to use for this. I got to get a new one of these, so I'll use this one. And basically what I'm doing is I'm going to be wetting the truck with the water, and that is going to soak kind of through the top layer of paint, which is just sitting on top of the hairspray for now, and I'll be able to rub that paint away. So let's zoom in here a little bit. Let's see if we can. All right, so this shouldn't take long to do this part. I am going to start in the bed, I think, and I'm just going to dunk that in the water for now. If you're doing a bigger part, you kind of want to start just a little bits of it at a time, but this is a small part. I want to see just how much I have to work it to start getting the paint removed. I also like to, where is it? I have my toothbrush that I use also for, if I tap it a little bit, you get some little markings in there. And you can see that it's starting to remove the paint. So with the bed, with the inside of the bed, I don't want to remove too much paint on the outsides because that's where the side walls of the pickup are. So you wouldn't have as much chipping there. If things were getting tossed in, for example. And like the raised areas, of course, are going to have more damage than the inside areas, more chipping. So you want to focus on that. And this works really well. This technique works well with that. Blows that water off here. So you can see how the chipping is coming along. And I will do additional chipping with some sponging, but this is a good base chipping to remove as much or as little bit of the paint as you want. In fact, since this is old and post-apocalyptic, I think I really want to get a lot off, at least the top parts of these. And you can see how the rust tones are showing through. Alright, so I think now I'm going to take a toothpick, just put a couple random scratches as if things were tossed in, and there. So this part's done as far as the hairspray part goes. So I'll rinse it off, and then I'm gonna dry it with just by dabbing it with a paper towel. You don't want to rub because then you'll rub the paint off. And what'll happen now is this will all settle back together, and you won't be able to chip it anymore once it fully dries. So that works out pretty well. So this part's done, and now I'm going to move on to the body. The body, I want to really make sure I get as much off of the mesh as I can of the blue, because that's going to ultimately be rust. And by getting as much off now as I can, it means I won't have to hand paint as much later of the rust back on. And you can see some of the bullet holes and damage and dents that I had applied yesterday with the Dremel. I had a little bit of damage to the mesh, and I want to get the blue off of these spikes as well. Alright, so let's start with the back. I'm just going to dip the back in here and give it a little bit of, I find that just a light little rubbing with the toothbrush to get it started tends to help. And then you don't have to work it with the brush as much. Also, if you by tapping it with the toothbrush, you get little just pin pricks of rust, which is kind of cool. Alright. So I want a lot of chipping around the wheel well, because especially towards the back of it, stuff's going to get kicked up. And damage the paint. Any of the little parts that are sticking out, of course, are going to get more damage from rubbing, especially if it's a death race kind of scenario. You know, you're battling the other vehicles, then shit's going to happen. And I will accentuate this later with some hand painting and sponging. Around the dents that I've added, I want to make sure I get in those real well and around them to accentuate those. And the toothpick can help to pick out little areas like behind the door here where it's been scratched from people getting in and out. So So try to get as much off of this spike as I can, but without damaging anything or rubbing off the primer. I mean, it is possible to overwork it and go right through to the primer. So try to avoid that. And now you can see how it's going along here with the rust. Put some more scratches here. Just some fine ones. Yeah, those look good. Alright, move on to the back hatch here. Really work around this Chevy logo here. It's going to look really neat. It'll pop since it's raised. And just make sure when you're handling it, you're not rubbing stuff off with your fingers as well. So it helps to do little bits at a time. So I rub through the primer with the edge of my brush here. I scratched it off. That's fine. I will be covering that with some sponge rust then, which will fix that. So no big deal. Working on the other side here. Scratches like I did there on the other one. Alright. And we're just working off the paint in a faster way than nature and wargaming would have done. Some of the actually I scraped that off of there on purpose. Bring that handle back. I'm going to be using some chrome on here anyway and then rusting it back. I might just hand paint that mesh anyway. I really don't want to risk popping it out of there and having to re-glue it. At least the window, the side windows. Alright, so do the front and top of the truck. Got a little more damage in the front. Alright, so I put a dent right here. But this works pretty well. I like doing this technique in conjunction with, like, oh man, yeah. Oh, that wasn't a scratched off thing. I popped off the one of the spike strips. Okay, I'll just have to glue that back on. I was being super careful not to scratch with the brush anymore, but that wasn't what it was. I like to use this technique to do multiple colors so that it looks like the vehicles have been repainted a few times. So I could have painted this yellow first, did the really chipped the hell out of it like I'm doing now, and then then hairsprayed it again, added another layer of color, and added more, and then it looks like it was repainted, that color was chipped off. You know, I wouldn't do more than 2 or 3 layers of that. It's going to be diminishing returns at that point, but looks neat when you do it. Yeah, see, it's not really coming off of the mesh for some reason, so I will just hand paint that. I'm going to add a few more scratches on the hood here. And I think I'm good. I'm going to toothpick down some of these seam lines here. That'll accentuate the detail. Okay, I'm gonna give that a dunk in the water, and I'm gonna dab it dry, and I can move on to the sponging after I glue that other part back on. Oof. I thought I had those on really well. I don't know what happened. All right. I was trying to do a little more chipping on this side, but it had already wet and re-dried, so no chipping to be had. I am going to rub the paint off of this door handle, though, down to the end primer, down to the bare metal, because that'll look cool. And I didn't actually chip anything in here. I wonder, oh, there we go. Wow, look at that. That's been soaking for a while, so a lot of it came off very fast. That's something to consider. The longer the stuff is wet, the easier it's going to be to remove the paint, and that's has pluses and minuses, of course. Okay, so let's see, grab my tweezers and glue this part back on. I didn't glue it over the primer, so I'm not 100% sure what happened, but I could have just been from working it too much. Tape from yesterday. All right, so I'll hold the part with the tweezers. Actually, I think I weakened it yesterday when I was, after the video, I was tweaking the photo etch and some of the spikes a little bit with my pliers because I wanted them to not be so straight. I wanted them to have a little more of a used, worn look to them. And so what happened is I probably loosened it without realizing it. And pull some of that water off, and then that ended up damaging it. So now when I put these together, we'll have the blue inside of the bed. Okay, so let's move on. So, okay, so I'm done with the hairspray chipping, so I'm going to move on to the chipping with the Secret Weapon miniatures paints, and Vallejo. Probably should toss those. They probably don't work anymore. They've been in that drawer for years. I have a whole bunch of paints with this size bottle, shaped bottle, in a drawer. But the only ones I really use in the drawer are the Secret Weapon rust set. So, okay, so these are numbered 1 through 6, and typically I use them in that order. I don't know. Yeah, the ones in the actual package are labeled that way as well. So this one's number 1 is a warm gray color. Number 2 is kind of a purpley rust color, which is actually fantastic. Rust isn't just reds and oranges. 3 is a dark brown. 4 is your standard rust color. 5 is a slightly lighter rust color. And 6 is for that really fresh rust, like if you leave like something wet and you get that rust ring. So I'm gonna shake up the first couple here. Grab some of that palette paper I used, the old label paper, and put that down. And I'm going to get some bits of just sponge that you use to wash your car with. Some more paper towel to dry the sponge in between the water I was using, which I will rinse everything with. And that's all I need for this next step. So I'm going to start with the gray. And this is going to give you that bare metal, not quite rusted yet look. This warm gray, number 1. I don't want to open up the new paints yet. I want to try to use the old stuff first. And then move on. I don't know. I mean, this paint has actually lasted a few years for as much as I use it. I've gotten a lot of use out of the set. Alright, let's see. So I'm going to focus on some of the parts that would have more spattered, sporadic rust. And you can see it's getting, yeah, the little dots of rust there. Along the bottom edge of the car especially, from weathering in general. Behind the wheel wells from where things hit, you know, around and behind the wheel wells. The front here, I want to give it some from hitting things that are not bugs. And then we're going to go to the other side. And this paint is not super, at least this gray one isn't very thick. So it lets the underlying colors shine through, which is actually very nice. It's something I like. Other people have other opinions and needs, so that might not work for everybody's stuff, but for me, it's exactly what I need. So I want to focus more on these spikes, get these nice and rusty. I'm going to really smush the first layer of paint on here. And get a little bit around the... A lot of the rust is going to get... it's layered, so you might see some of this, you might see some of it, a lot of it's going to get covered up by the next layers of rust. And that's fine, that's what you want. So, okay, so gray's done on that except for the stuff I want to hand paint. And I'll go into the bed here and same deal, focus on the areas that would get the most wear. Push that sponge down in there. Okay, so these two parts are done. I'm going to clean the sponge here. And then I'm going to get as much of the water out with paper towel as I can. And then I'll just set it there and I'll move on to the next one. First things first though, I'm going to clean up some of the areas where I chipped through the primer with the edge of that paintbrush by using just a little bit of this and hand painting it. Now, I've never used really good brushes before. I tend to get the cheap ones at Michael's, but I would really like to try some good brushes one of these days. It just it's one of those things I just haven't been able to justify the expense of, and I know that they're good. I know Secret Weapon has good brushes. Some of the other companies do, but you know, I try to model on a budget as much as I can. Even if I can afford the stuff, I try to budget it a little better just so I can do more modeling. Alright, let's see here. So I want to hand paint these screens. And I'm actually going to blow through the screen because I have little dots of paint that are going to end up drying in between. And then that gets those out of the screen, so I'm not filling up the screen with paint hole, you know, I'm not going to have paint in the screen. There we go. Alright, I think I need some more paint. But this brush is just American Painter 6/0. Nothing impressive at all for the brush. But it's good enough for what I'm doing here with this rust work. You know, my lack of good brushes is probably why I don't paint figure gaming miniatures, figures, and stuff like that. I don't know how people do those faces so small. And I know it's not all the brush either. What is... Okay. There we go. I'll just touch the back. There. Okay, so that's cleaned out. And now the front screen. I could have masked this off, but meh, this is fine. Alright, so blow the excess paint through there. So now the screen is no longer blue. There's a little bit of blue on the side one still here, shining through. Because like I said, this is this particular color. It might just be this batch, since it's an early batch. I'm not 100% sure. It's not, it's kind of translucent, which I like for the most part, but, you know, that's not great for every application. All right, so the number 1 is done. I'm going to move on to number 2, which is that purpley rust color. It's like a purpley grayish rust. And sometimes I just stop it at 2, depending on the age and style of rust I'm going for. Probably going to look brown on the screen here, but I assure you, it's got a purple tint to it. There we go. You can see it better as I'm sponging it. Alright, so then I'll just go over where I did the gray with this purple. Since this is already gray inside the wheel wells here, I didn't bother, I will say, but I actually forgot. But that's fine. I'll just add a little bit of purple in there. I'll add a little bit to this. But yeah, I mean, if the thing's already gray, then why put gray chipping over the same, you know, near same color gray? And you will actually use... I have more of 6 than I do of 1. Because as you're layering these colors, you end up using less and less. If you use the same amount, you're probably going to obscure what's in there. So you see how I'm getting the combination now between the hairspray rust and the sponged on speckled rust. I try to get as much of the paint off the sponge first as I can. But yeah, I really like this purple color, and it's going to end up being like the main amount of rust on here. It goes really well with the blue. Sure I get it on the spikes on both sides. Okay, so this side's good. And it's looking real old and damaged. And you see there's like definitely a color difference, but that'll, with the next couple rust colors, it'll all start to blend together better, and, you know, it'll look more natural between the base coat that I hairspray chipped and the sponge. Alright, I'm gonna 3 and 4 here. I don't know how these airbrush. I've never actually airbrushed them before. Okay, what am I doing? 3 and then 4. Driving the tip here. This. There we go. All right, next. And I'm not going to do as much of this brown color even though it's a good color. This brown rust color. Just going to, I want to make sure I keep enough of that purple shining through. I want this to look, well, the client wants it to look old and beat up and post-apocalyptic, so I'm really going to town on the chipping here. I'm not showing as much restraint as I might on something else. Now you notice with the sponging, I'm missing some of the stuff. I'll go back in with my brush and put a wash of rust in there of the same color, and that'll be fine. Alright, so let me grab the brush here, put a little water on it, and I'm just going to go in there and add a little bit of a wash in some of the areas that should be rusted, but you know, the sponging and other stuff can't really reach. In the panel lines. This is acrylic, so I don't want to let it sit on these lines for too long. Alright, so I got the two lines here of the hood. And I'm going to go through with some oil paint later and really refine these lines better, but as a start, this works quite well. And I'm just going to get in here a little bit inside of this, because I really couldn't get much of what was here. And just random smash that in there and we're good. Okay, on to number 4. Everything I do is a process. People try to find one product that'll do everything immediately, and find that doesn't work so well. That's where people end up doing chalk washes with black pastels and junk like that, and it just ends up looking bad. Okay, so the rust color. In there so you can see how it's just changing the tone subtly, not too much. It's bringing it more in line with the hairspray chip rust color. This truck has seen better days. Oops, I forgot to put it on the other part. All right. I'm going to have some more rust in this bed just from stuff sitting around being wet. And I'll do that with oil paint as well, with some washes. Okay. So right now we have our rust colors on, and I'm realizing I didn't actually hand paint any of the rust tones onto these side screens like I should have. So I'll do that real quick. Blow out the excess. Yeah, I'm not being subtle at all with the old and rustiness. This particular job doesn't call for subtlety. Okay, there we go. So it's starting to look like something. I think I forgot to do a little bit of wash on the back as well. So you can see the two very light blue lines there. get the darker paint in these recesses. The bullet holes as well. That'll add depth to the bullet holes. All right. And I'll do a little bit of that darkness on some of the dents too to make them look deeper. Around the gas tank hole. And put a little bit more of this dark paint in some of the other panel lines. This is, I'm using just a wash of water and number 1 here to do these. All right, good. All right, now let's see what is next. I think I might just put a little bit of number 5 on. I'm going to skip number 6. I don't need rust quite that fresh on this part. And let's see this one. Clog tip as well. Okay, good. So get as much of this off as possible because I don't want to overdo this color, but just a little bit here and there, and it'll bring out some of the other tones. If you do too much, you can rub it off quick enough. But I will take some of the number 5 and put, you know, some of the dust, some of it as if the rust had settled in some of these areas after a rain or something. Okay, so that should be it on this for this part. Okay, I made myself a list of everything I need to do here. So chipping, rust, blue and fade, the black and gray parts now is what I'm up to. So I'm going to set these aside to dry, and I'm going to move on to the other parts. So I've got the chassis here and the side rails, the ram, which I added that little piece of barbed wire I mentioned yesterday. Actually, it goes this way. This is the top. And my brother says this little thing on the front is called a blower. And then there's the rear windshield, of course, which I don't need to do anything with yet. All right, so I'm going to add just a little rust to the side rails and the underside. I'm going to, I think first I'm going to chrome up the front here and the back so that I can rust over top of those. I'll just add a little bit of rust chipping to this, the ram. I've already sprayed it with Tamiya German Gray, and then gave it a dusting of the Hull Red and my custom orange mix. So it has a rust base already, but you can always add a little more to something like that. Let's see, there's one other product I'll be using, which is this dark steel pigment. And this I will put on my finger and rub it on to some of the raised areas so it looks like it's worn steel. I'll do that on the other side of the car after I put the dust layer on. So let's do the rust on the bottom. Since it's already gray, I'll start with number 2. I'm sorry, Justin, if you're watching this. I really should be using your new bottles to promote your product. I just kind of want to use up the old stuff first. See, I'm getting some... Alright, I got disconnected for a bit here. There we go, we're back. Wait, don't want... Awesome. Alright, continuing, adding just this purpley rust here on the underside. Oh, I should have chromed. Did the chrome. Wanted to do first, but I'll do that in a bit. I'll do that next. Add some speckled rust to this whole RAM assembly and barbed wire. This thing's going to be pretty dusty, so you're not going to see a whole lot of rust through it. But I like to do my layers kind of translucent, so you may see something. So I take the chance, and then I'm going to rust up this blower. Okay. And moving on, I'm going to move on to doing a little chrome. So the chrome, I could do it several ways here. I could use the Molotow liquid chrome marker, but I kind of want to work faster than that. Got some, let's see here. I've got this polished metal MIG color here. Let's give this a go. I've only used it a couple times in the past for things. They sent me some samples, and I liked it last time I used it, so let's see. Hopefully it's still good. I haven't used it in a while. Make sure I give it a real good shake. And sometimes when, like, some paints in these bottles will last forever. Some brands of paint. Others, like this, do not. And I know the AK Interactive paint sets, back when they first came out, they sent me samples of them, and some of them were fantastic, and other ones I couldn't even get out of the bottle. Okay, so this stuff is actually pretty nice and metallic. This polished metal. Let's see. And I don't need this to be real thick or even real shiny. I just need a little bit of chrome to show through. For this bumper, because I want the bumper to look like crap. Aged and, you know. Okay, so let's see. So that's fine for now. I got a little bit of paint inside of there. You can see it reflecting the blue of my shirt. And this is fine for what it is, and it'll end up covered up, so it doesn't matter. And it's acrylic, so it'll dry quick. And just a little bit on this back area as well. All this will get covered up by dust and mud anyway, but for now I kind of want something just in case a little bit shows through. Okay, so front and back bumpers chromed up a bit, and I can continue with the rusting. So I think I'm going to skip number 3, go straight on to number 4 here on the bottom. And I won't accidentally get chrome paint. Wipe that off of my palette. On anything when I'm doing the rest of this rust. Okay, so do the rest of the rust, and then the next step after that would be dust. maybe some discoloration first. All right, anyway, skipping on to 4. Shaking it up. Trying not to touch the chrome stuff I just did. All right, so that's done, and now for the chrome part of it that I did, I'm gonna use the same number 4 color, and I'm gonna lightly dab it over that chrome. And at this scale, you should get that nice rusted chrome look. That speckled chrome. So between this and all the layers of dust, it should look pretty good. So you get just a little bit of light showing through the chrome. All right, shiny. And I need to continue rust on the other parts that I just forgot I was doing. All right, so more rust on the RAM using the number 4. And a little more on the blower. All right, those parts are rusted. And I think now's the time for, not dust yet, I gotta actually paint the hubcaps before I move on to the dust. Let's see, how should I do the hubcaps? What do I want those to look like? Customer like the original wheels. So I'm just trying to decide if I want to do the hubcaps just completely rust, or if I want to have any of the polished metal chrome look to it. I think I might do, yeah, I think I actually might do the chrome, the polished metal here underneath, and that'll tie the two areas together. All right. Trying to make sure you guys can see what I'm doing here. While making sure that I can see what I'm doing as well. Hey, it's me again. Okay, here we go. This should work. All right. I'll fix that little bit there in a while. With some more black before I do the dust. Again, I don't need to do this perfect in here since it's going to be fairly invisible. All right, one down. Move on to the next. All right, next wheel. And the last one. All right, wheels are done. Let that dry just a bit, and I'm going to grab my black paint and touch up where I screwed up the chrome on the wheels. I have a more of a satin color black here of Tamiya. And I just need to stir it. I'm trying to stir. There we go. I use old bits of sprue as stirrers. Put that down there. All right, on to cleaning up my sins here. Like I mentioned yesterday, I also have shaky hands, so that I can do this at all is kind of cool. Feather that around a bit so it doesn't just look like a paint drip. Okay, that's cleaned up. And now I can add some rust. I've got one of those Cricut machines that you can use to cut various paper-like materials and some really thin styrene with it. And in the past, I didn't today, but I've gotten my calipers, my digital calipers here. These are my old ones, but my good ones are somewhere else. And I've measured exactly how big the hubcap is, cut out some circles from tape on the Cricut by putting some of the tape on this label backing, and then peel off the circles, and I've made myself custom masks to mask off the wheels. I don't necessarily need to do that for this one, but if I'm doing certain custom wheel designs, it helps out. So I'm going to squeeze out some more of, something's clogging this one. I might have to move on to the other bottle. I just need a little bit. Rust the wheels up here. Pinch my little ball of sponge here so that it could be a little more precise. And I'm going to go from the middle and kind of push up and out. That way I avoid getting paint on the actual tire portion. Alright, those are looking like rusty chrome. Okay, so I got rusty chrome wheel hubs now. Just a little bit of sponging and Secret Weapon Rust 4. Okay, what next? Now, this part here is still wet. This little part of the hub here. Blow some of that excess off and put it in front of my fan, which has been blowing on that one part of the grass demo for the past 2 days. After I screwed up starting a demo yesterday and realizing it was wet. So it should be dry by now. It's been in front of that fan overnight, all day yesterday. But I'm not going to take any chances this time. I think what I'm going to do next is a little bit of oil paint work on here. And I'm going to switch palette papers. And I'm going to grab my box of oil paint. drawer of oil paint. Okay. Let's see here. All right, so I'm going to use, these are just the paints I use. You can use any good oil paint like Winsor Newton. These are the 502 Optilung paints. I've had some of these for years. I'm going to use this shadow brown color. And I think I'm just, not Snow White. There is I have a bluish white color in here somewhere. Not the faded UN white, it's the other one. I've got a lot of paint. Oh, there it is. It's in the bottom of the drawer. Okay, German Gray Highlights, which is actually kind of a whitish blue color. And that'll actually work really well for a little bit of fading on the top of the truck. Alright. That's stuck. I haven't used that one in a while. I'll use these to open it. And, you know, when you do that, be careful. You don't want to twist the metal part of the tube and end up ripping the tube. A little bit of this stuff goes a long way. I usually just put like a little smear, you know, especially for a truck like this. And then as a thinner, the only thinner I really use for oil paints and modeling these days is Weber Odorless Terpenoid. This is an old can that I just keep refilling with from their plastic, their newer plastic bottle. This one fits on my shelf better, so it's, you know, kind of like a refill. So put a little bit of that in a metal dish here. Get a brush that I haven't been using for acrylic. Several brushes. So if you look way back, like a decade or so ago, I did a Millennium Falcon discoloration tutorial. This is the same brush I used. It's like, my brushes are crap, but I try to take really good care of them. And I need some more paper towel. Alright, so now I'm ready. So I'm going to start with this faded color here. And I'm just going to make, you know, a little bit of slurry. Just, what's nice about this is it'll wipe away for the most part. And I'm just going to kind of randomly place this on here with this brush. And I'm going to remove it with I'll just use this flat one here. I'm going to stipple it. And that's going to give it, I don't know if you can even tell. In person it's real subtle, but it's lightening it. You have these little lightened sunspots, like fade spots, where the paint is faded around the chipping. Maybe some of the primer is showing through. And because this particular color is a blue-gray, like a blue-white, very pale blue, it works really well with this base color I already did. And I'm just doing this on some of the raised areas here. If I wanted to, I could leave heavier areas, but this stuff will take a while to dry. Not so much when it's applied very thin like this. So I've got that going for me. This will dry quick and it won't affect anything else I'm doing. Let's see. This part's dry now, so I could do a little bit of fading in the back. And I'm going to avoid the areas with the heavy rust and focus on some of the areas where there's still blue left. And if you do too much, the great thing about oil paint is Just take a little bit of thinner, and now I'm just wiping it off the raised areas here with this brush. And so that's faded. Again, kind of hard to tell, but when I take the final pictures, it should be more noticeable. And then this shadow brown color, I'm going to use for like grease and just the dark shadow areas of the weathering. So around these little pipes here. Oh, I should have did this in the chrome. I mean, it's not too late. I'll use it to give the seats a little bit of wet weathering. A little bit of shadow. One to keep the interior gray. I don't know what color the interior should be, but I'm just keeping it gray. And what I'm doing here is just a wash with this paint. Not too thick. You don't want it pooling and leaving big glops. But just enough that it'll almost be, it'll almost have disappeared by the time it dries. But there'll be a noticeable difference in some of the areas that they'll look more popped. Alright, so that part's done, and then I'll do this a little more of the shadow in areas like around. You see how the paint is running, wicking. Just you know, where the hood is, where the hood line is. A little more on the windows and such. You can see how it's kind of filling in between the holes. That's why I keep blowing them out. There we go. There's the door seams. The gas can seam. And a lot of these lines will end up hidden later on, but
Riley and I are going to make snow cones.
You're going to make snow cones?
Yeah.
Okay. Say hello, Lainey.
Hi.
Hey, can you text your mother and tell her I'm doing a live demo so she doesn't call in the middle of it?
Okay.
Alright. It's only one person ever calls me. And I can guarantee she's going to call while I'm doing this. I don't like to talk on the phone. I avoid it as much as I can. I used to talk, which is funny, I used to talk on the phone all the time, but the older I've gotten, the more introverted I've gotten about that kind of thing, so. Well, is what it is. Maybe the more people you deal with, the less you want to deal with them. Let's see, a few more seams in here. Oh man, didn't notice some of the stuff is getting out of focus, and I apologize for that. I'm focusing on my work, not necessarily on the camera work. And just, you know, I'm just adding some of the washes of this around some of the detail areas. This will make them pop. A little heavier in here where I accidentally got some of the chromey color here, the polished metal. And I'm not going to add any inside the wheels. I'll add some of this shadow brown color, which you can get by mixing I'm going to assume, just based on regular oil paint colors, because you're not going to find one called shadow brown that's this color, except for this range. But if you mix just a little bit of black with some raw umber, you'll get a color close to this. It's just a dark brownish color, a little hint of just, gosh, maybe, I don't even want to say that it has a hint of green, but I could see there might be a little hint of an olive in there. Not enough to make much of a difference, not enough to say, hey, that's a dark olive color, but just enough that it's to cool it down a little bit. So it's, you know, it's a good color though. Okay, and then the blower. which, I don't know, maybe my brother's punking me and it's not called that. All right. And lastly, don't want to forget about these side rails, these steps here. Okay. So that's enough for the shadow. Oh, wait. Is it? Yes, I already did that part. Okay, so then that needs to dry now. The thinner dries pretty quick. I'm gonna put, I'm gonna move some, actually while that's drying, I am going to paint with this silver paint again here, that other bit of bumper I missed. Where did I put my brush? Things are starting to get lost. I have too much stuff here. Huh, interesting. I don't know when this truck model came. You know what? That might just be part of the grate. Never mind. There's some texture right here. And if my first instinct was those are 3D print lines that they didn't clean up, but actually I think it's just supposed to be part of the grill. So it's fine detail, nice. It's actually kind of funny, these Hot Wheels cars, once you strip them, you see a lot of detail that ended up getting obscured by paint. You see a lot of flaws that ended up getting obscured by paint too, but you also see the detail. All right. I'm going to move my box of other paints. I'm going to pull this fan closer and turn it on high, so it might be a little noisier for a bit. I just want to dry this stuff a little quicker. So putting it in front of the fan will dry that thinner quicker. And so yeah, we can sit here and watch paint dry. It's like 90% of my job. Why isn't this turning? This should be rotating and it's not. Oh well. That's why the video is kind of crooked. I'm trying to rotate my... and I'm turning the camera to me again. Let me try to focus this while the paint dries. Oh, that's why. My charging cable is keeping it from moving. I'm just gonna... There we go. I'm just gonna unplug that, and I was wondering why it wasn't moving. Alright. That's better. Ish. Yeah, I wanted to charge the phone while I was doing this because I didn't want to run out of battery in the middle of the demo. That would suck. Phone lasts for a while, though. Okay, these are about dry. Give it another minute, and then I'll do all the dust. So, before the dust, however, first I'll need to put a little more rust on, this part that's also drying. I won't need the oil paint anymore, so I can move this palette out of the way. This one. So I'll just have to rust the one bumper that I missed, and then we'll move on. Then I'll assemble the whole truck, and then once the truck is assembled, then I'll start on the dusting part of it, because I want the dust to be... If I dust one part separate from the other, it's going to look kind of strange, and it won't be as uniform as it should be. So, you know what? I feel like this mesh could have some more rust on it. Come on. So I'm gonna Add a little more while that dries. Yeah, that's looking better. Using the number 4 secret weapon rust set. And I think I'm actually going to go and add some of the number 5 this refresher rust as well, because that actually looks quite nice when added to the mesh from experience. Just dry brush it out on here a little bit. All right. There we go. That's much better. Looks more rusty now than rust painted over blue. Okay, everything should be dry enough now that I can rust that one bumper. That should be enough paint. Try to avoid getting the rust on the headlamps. Try to leave those chrome looking. Okay, rusted that up. Now it's time for assembly and then dust. I think you guys will like how I do the dust part of this. It's kind of neat. Okay, so I'm going to need a scratchy dental-like tool here. I have this one pick here with kind of a little curved edge because I broke it, bent it. I got these at Harbor Freight. These ones are cheap. I have some really nice, good ones that I use though. I got, oh gosh, 2005, 2006 maybe. They last forever. The good dental tools. All right, so I'm going to assemble the car now. I'm going to, so when I go to assemble this car, I'm going to first assemble it with super glue, just a little bit to hold it together while weathering, but then I'm going to add some JB Weld into the holes, and that will permanently seal that up. A little bit of excess plastic in there from when I drilled. All right, so let me adjust the camera here. Whoa. Hello, tape. Adjust the camera here. I knocked some tape off the shelf. And I will assemble this car. And I'm going to need this tool here, though, to scrape some of the paint off the hood for when I glue the hood down. I can turn this fan down and put it out of my way now. Okay. Because again, I don't want to glue over the primer. I want to glue metal to metal. So I'm going to scrape. It's not working. Primer works really well. Okay, here we go. This tool's scraping it off. So I'm scraping it off the underside of where I'm going to put the glue on the rack on the ram part of it. And let's see here. I think first I'll do a dry fit because I want to see exactly how I need to put this rear window in, where it actually ends up fitting, because I don't remember. Okay. I don't know if I need to put it in first, if I can put it in later. how far in it needs to go, where I should glue it. But if I dry fit it first, that'll make the whole process easier. Okay, so it's I could just glue it in the top and it's not going to be a big deal at all. All right, a little bit of super glue here. And I'll do a toothpick. I need to apply the glue to the top of the window. Scrape a little bit of the paint off here. And then I'll use my tweezers to put this down in there. All right. Just trying to adjust it here, make sure it's all good before the glue sets up. Excellent. Okay, rear window is in. And dry fit this one more time with the window. Just to double check. Yep, that fits in there well. The dust layer is what's really gonna make this pop. Okay. I see a few little areas I just need to touch up real quick, and then I'll continue. Here, here, and I'm just going to run a little along the top of these spikes because I kind of rub the paint off the sharp edge, and that is good. Okay. All right, ready to glue this all together, and then we can get onto the dust part of it. Sand the top of that off because I'm going to be gluing on it. Okay. I'm trying to figure out how I want to deal with this ram, getting it in there, like in the whole scheme of things. You know what, I might just mix up the JB Weld now. I don't think I need to dry fit. I mean, this stuff takes like 6 hours to fully cure, so I think it'll be fine if I do it now. So JB Weld, basically it's like an epoxy glue with steel in it. It's really dark gray after it's mixed, equal parts A and B. And the stuff is very, very strong. So it's just kind of like 5 minutes epoxy, 5-minute epoxy, only it takes longer and it's so much stronger. Okay, so ends up being kind of like a thick, pasty glue. It's not runny, which is nice. And I'm just going to put a little bit around each of the rivets here. Okay, so a little bit of the JB Weld on each side of that. Once I put this together, there's no need for me to take it back apart again. But I could still maneuver it enough that I could slide the bottom part of this inside the ram inside of here between these two layers. And that's what I was worried about. I need to just pry these apart 0.2 millimeters so that I can slide the bottom part of the ram in there. And that squeezes it in. And now once that's in, I can figure out where I'm going to scratch the paint off and apply the glue, the super glue. So just scratch a little line of the paint off on the hood. Using the sharp tool, get right through the primer into the bare metal. And I'm going to use the Gorilla Super Glue. Apply it with a toothpick to the underside of the ram mount here. Carefully as possible. Okay, I'm back. It looks like I had to reconnect again. Okay, so anyway, I got a little bit of the super glue. You can see just a little bit of it. It's not like glops of it, but there's a little bit of shine where it was, right in here. But when I do the dust, that will cover that with, like, the dust is a matte product, so it won't even notice. Okay, so the ram is on there. It looks pretty good. And now I'll attach the blower. And actually I already have glue out. Underside of the blower is already bare from when I used some blue tack to hold it to a skewer. Make sure I put enough glue on here. And then I just have to make sure this is straight and centered. Yep, there we go. Alright, that's a badass looking truck now. Alright, onto the dust. Let's see here. I don't think I need this palette anymore, so get this out of my way with some of these brushes, toothpicks, glue, other items that will mess up my finish if they're still in the way. Sharp objects, glue bottles. All right. Okay, so the last two steps I've got to do is the dusting and then a little bit of this metal rub. So the dust part of it, fairly straightforward. I am going to, let me find the product. I actually didn't pull it out. I've got a bunch of these old MIG, or are these AK? I don't even know anymore. AK washes and stuff. And I don't know if the one I need is in there or if I have it out. I'm looking for one that's nice and dusty in color. Let's see here. That's engine grime. That's a nice one. Engine oil. Back when I used to do a whole lot more demoing and stuff, this Rainmarks one might work. They sent me a bunch of their products to use to show off, and some of them I like, some of them I don't. You know, I'm pretty sure I have something else aside from this Rainmarks one that's a light dust color. Oh, here, dust effects. Although this NATO Tanks one though is warmer, and I want this to have a desert kind of look, so I think I'll use the NATO Tanks one. Oh, here's an Africa dust effects. Still think I'm going to use the NATO Tank one. So I'll shake this up real good, and yeah, I'll run this through my airbrush, and I will spray a light layer of it, focusing on the bottom and underside. And oh, actually, a JB weld that's in there. I'm going to take a Q-tip and I'm going to smear that around a little bit. And I'll fill that with a putty later. Okay, so I'm going to airbrush focusing on the bottom, the wheel wells, any place that would get dust. Just a light amount of it on the top, a little more in the bed. And then that's going to give me a very smooth, airbrushed looking layer of dust, which is not ideal. But I'll show you why I'm still going to use that product to do it. Let's see, get that aimed over at my airbrush area. All right. Oh, I gotta turn my vent on so it's gonna get noisy again. Okay. Get this stuff open. And I'm just gonna put a little bit in the airbrush. Probably should have used the pipette. There's some of the excess stuff coming off of the side of the bottle, which is what I'm using the Q-tip for, to get rid of. Alright. I'm going to turn this down. And it's going to spray a thin layer of it, but you'll see once I get back over there. So I'm going to do it kind of heavy on the wheels, on the underside. Back where it's going to pull up the dust more when you're driving. And then just a light about on the top, so that's on the ram. A little more in the bed. And just a little more in here. Okay, so I got the dust on here. I'm going to clean my airbrush out real quick, let that dry. And I run a little lacquer thinner through the airbrush to clean this stuff out. airbrush is clean. And let me go turn off the vent. Okay, so this is still kind of wet with the thinner. Let me bring my fan over here. Wet with the stuff I just sprayed on. I want it to dry first, but then I'll show you guys how I'm going to work with it next. Let's see, I need my odorless terpenoid. We're almost there. I don't know if you can tell, I put a lot more on the bottom than I did on the top. I put extra behind the grill, extra on the back, as the dust is going to get kicked up there. So that's rain marks for NATO tanks is what I used. And alright, this is dry enough now that I can, so what I'm going to do is right now this dust is, let me get better in the light here. Okay, this dust looks airbrushed on, it's just a solid kind of thing. I mean, it doesn't look too bad, but I'm going to hit it with the lightly dampened sponge, and the sponge dampened in the same terpenoid I used for the oil paint. And I'm going to start at the top, and I'm going to work my way down, because, you know, and you can streak a little bit if you want to for the rain marks. I like to use a stiff brush for that to get those streaks in. And what this is going to do, I actually do this a lot when I'm doing dust effects on things, is it's really going to model that dust and make it less uniform. It's going to look like it's in piles instead of just a mass. And, oops, glue's not dry. Okay. And the reason I start at the top and work my way down is, you know, the dust is going to end up flowing down, and I put less on the top anyway. If I start at the bottom and work my way up, I'm going to end up transferring a lot of that top dust to the bottom. And this stuff stays active for a good while, so you don't have to do it immediately. I'm just doing it immediately because, you know, it's a demo. But I'm going to do it on the back window here, and you can see how it's starting to model the back window a little bit better. The trunk. Once it dries, you'll be able to see the look. But notice that the dust has covered a lot of the chrome. And yeah, randomness is the key. You want things to look less manufactured and more randomized. The randomer, the better. I sprayed the tires, but I think I'm going to try to wipe most of it off of them. Actually, I think I know what I'll do to clean and make the tires look nice. I'm going to hit the bottom of this more. Sometimes I'll do several colors, layered. This one I just did the rain marks color, but sometimes I'll use a muddier color as well, and run that through. Let's see, let me get some scrap paper here. And I'm going to run the wheels on that. Yeah, that works. Okay, so just, you know, sponge as much as you want. You know, if you do it too much, obviously you're going to lose some of the effect. But now we gotta let this dry, and because right now it looks glossy, of course, because it's wet. As it dries, though, the stuff's gonna dry pretty matte. If you need to, you can sponge on some more of this now that you have your base. So I might actually do that just because on the back, just to show you. So I'll take a little bit on just out of the cap here, dab as much of it away as I can, and I'm just gonna put some extra. Oh, why am I doing that? I keep forgetting that that glue I used the JB Wild, which is gonna take 6 hours. Okay, well anyway, I don't want to damage this because it is for a commission, but that's how you do it. I'm going to make sure everything is stacked up here again, and then I'm just going to let it dry. Alright, let's put the fan on high, clean my sponge. I keep dabbing the top because I don't want fingerprints up there, so I'm trying to model out the fingerprints. And then actually have to check on the bottom as well after that. Yep, no fingerprints. Good. Alright. So it's drying, it's becoming more matte. It is like watching paint dry. It's all part of the process, I guess. Alright, so I see on this side I didn't focus on this runner so well. So I'm going to go and I'm going to hit it with the sponge again to, you know, move some of that dust around. And I could move it around with the paintbrush too a little bit if I want. Alright. But yeah, we're looking pretty good now. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of this pigment on my finger. And this stuff's basically powdered graphite. So if you have something, if you have a pencil, you can rub a pencil on some sandpaper. I have this really old solid graphite stick here for drawing, and sometimes I'll rub this on some sandpaper just because I get more quicker, but that was before I picked this stuff up. And gosh, I got so much of this left in this bottle. A little bit of it goes a long way. I have a little bottle of S&J powders, and I have one that's chrome or silver or aluminum. You put that stuff over black, over matte black, and it ends up looking like chrome. Stuff's a little toxic, I think, so I try not to use it too often, but man, it's beautiful. That one I use gloves for, but this is just graphite, no big deal. Alright, so I can't really, I want to do the bottom with this, but I don't want to do the bottom with it. I want to leave the dust on the bottom. Oops, stuck my finger too far into the mix, but you can see it's shiny. Hold on a second, I'm going to go over my trash can here. I'm just going to rub it between my finger and thumb, and that's nice and shiny. And anywhere you would get rubbing, like these side rails for example, I'm just going to lightly rub a little bit of this graphite onto these rails, maybe on the edge of the bed here and some of the corners, and that's going to add just a little bit of a steel shine. Anywhere that you're going to have rubbing, so in the bed here where stuff is getting rubbed over the steel, and the stuff looks real nice over the rust. A little on the top lip of the hatch, this other rail, and a good bit of it on the ram, because it's got to be hitting stuff. It makes the little rivets pop that we pushed out yesterday on the photo etch. Yeah, you'll lose. It depends on what you seal it with, but yeah, if I were to seal this with a matte, I would lose it. If I were to seal it with a gloss, it would still happen, but then you'd lose the nice matte finish of the rest of it. I don't like to. I try to avoid sealing stuff if possible. And I want to make sure I rub some of this, really get in there on top of the texture, that diamond play texture. I try to avoid sealing stuff if I can. You end up losing a lot of the sheen and luster that you worked so hard to do in the first place. So you can see how I got that nice combination here of that worn steel versus the matte, faded matteness of the paint. And this is pretty much it. I don't think I want to do the underside. I think I'm going to call this done. It's nice and dusty. You can see, I'll take good final pictures. But you can see that nice bit of dust that's, we're going to put some on the Chevy symbol here. A nice bit of dust that got kicked up on the back. I might actually add a little bit more of that later. But yeah, that's it. I'm going to put a little more here. But yeah, it looks real nice. I'm happy with it. A little more on the sides of these, make these pop. You notice like the graphite, that little steel, it's shinier, so it's going to highlight things. Edges of the grate, edges of the barbed wire. Anywhere where things would tend to rub or be rubbed is where you would want to put that. So I think that's it. I think I'm gonna let this dry, and then later on I'll take some beauty shots, and I should be able to send it to the client in a few days. I like to let stuff dry a few days before I wrap it up. I don't want the oil paint to be all sealed up and something end up happening to it. So I want to make sure everything is completely fully dried. I might go back in and do a few more little touch-ups if I need to anywhere. I'll take a look, but for the most part I think I'm going to call it done. Alright guys, thanks for watching this. I think it's been 3.5 hours total of Gasland videos for this. So yeah, that's it. You're welcome, VDub. Check out fictinfood.com for more tips, videos, my gallery, Industrial Mechanica for my kit products, and for final pieces similar to this, you can check out my Fictin Etsy shop. I have a couple cars left on there to purchase, and I have a pile of them that I'm going to be doing and adding up at some point. So thanks a lot, and I'll talk to you guys in the next demo, which should be the grass for that little mud golem. He should be dry now. See you later.